Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Global Podcast. I'm your host, as always, Kyle Quinn. And joining me today is Chris Nugent once again. Good to have you back, Chris.
Good to be back, Kyle, as always. Looking forward to the chat, as I always do. Yep, good to be back, mate. Thanks.
Okay, so we're going to chat about the Newcastle game at the weekend. Talk about our takeaways from that, and then we'll move on to Tottenham, which is coming up tomorrow night. Another huge game. So here are my five takeaways from the nil each draw with Newcastle. Um, Five main takeaways anyway. Sancho was anonymous yet again. Another very poor performance. Lucky to stay on for the entirety of the game. Bruno, he's been in poor form quite a while now. I know he's had the odd good game, but I mean since the start of last season, he's really gone downhill from the Bruno that the from the initial 18 months at the club. He's now looking almost a shadow of the player that he used to be when he first arrived. And you think of all the goals and assists that he used to get every single week. Now he's got one goal this season. Um, Fred, just simply appalling. Just never ever going to be good enough at Manchester United. Um, I mean, just look at Manchester City's midfield options: Rodri, Gudowan, Foden, De Bruyne, Bernardo Silva, and then you look at us with Fred. It's just a joke. Um, and then once again, we were toothless up front. We've only managed one goal in the last two games, and that was Scott McTominay in injury time against Nicosia. So despite I think Rashford had 14 shots on goal in that game against the Cypriot side, and didn't manage to score once. Then he missed a shockingly easy header at the end of that Newcastle game. And I think if Ronaldo was still on the pitch, he would have buried that. Um, and also, my last point is it also proved that we're so reliant on Christian Eriksen. Fred came in to replace him, obviously, and Fred isn't even half the player that Eriksen is. So we just cannot afford to do without him. So, firstly, can you give me your reaction to the points I've made there, Chris?
Yeah, so as always, Kyle, I think you make pretty fair points. I think, yeah, it was my feeling of the game was it felt like games we'd had at the start of the season and the last season, this slow play that I always talk about, this kind of no ideas, no creation, no penetration, looked like if Newcastle sat with a blank wall of a defence that we were never going to break it down. It was back to that stuff again. And I think, getting into the detail, I think you made some good points there. It definitely shows we are very reliant on Christian Eriksen. Um, yeah, Fred and Casemiro. To me, yeah, it's interesting that that's the Brazilian partnership. And obviously Brazil have, very different forwards to what we have, although we have some great forwards, of course, too. And we have Anthony there as well. But yeah, those two right now don't look like a brilliant pairing. Uh, Casemiro is naturally defensive, and I think Fred is too. And Fred at times was venturing forward, and he looked like like a fish out of water. He didn't know what to do with the ball. He didn't know where to pass it to. He'd no ideas. And I think Ten Hag must be looking at that and thinking that's not a scenario we want to get into again. You've got Fernandez obviously in front of him there, who you'd expect to be doing just laying the ball off too, but that wasn't happening. Yeah, just generally a flat performance. And it seems like no kind of coincidence that you fall back on some of the players, that we've had from last season, who we kind of wanted to see out of the team, some of them back into the team, and it looked like business as usual. So yeah, not much of a shock in some ways, but really disappointing.
Yeah, something else I wanted to bring up was Ten Hag's performance on the day. And just because I'm criticizing Ten Hag doesn't mean I want him to go. There is a difference. You are allowed to criticize a new manager, and if you do, it doesn't mean that you want him to leave and be replaced. But on the day, I think he made mistakes. You could question the substitution of Ronaldo after 70 minutes and bringing on Rashford. Um, because I know Ronaldo wasn't great in that 70 minutes, but if you're desperate for a goal, you know Ronaldo can get one at any moment if he's provided the service. And there we seen it at the end of the game. Great cross came in, I think, from Casemiro, and Rashford basically had a free header and put it wide of the post. So I'm not. I can see the logic in bringing on Rashford, but I would have taken off Sancho because he was very poor again, and it's a like for like replacement there as well. And also he made one sub that he has 5 subs available. He made one sub in the whole of the 90 odd minutes. I know the bench was full of youngsters, but this is a manager who came from Ajax, who's used to blooding young players. Why couldn't he have brought on Garnacho, say for Sancho or Anthony, for example? Because he's a player that impressed him in pre-season, but we haven't seen as much of Garnacho as we expected. I understand why he didn't bring on Zidane Iqbal for Fred. You know, perhaps he thought it was too soon for a player as inexperienced as that. Um, I even know I wouldn't have been against that substitution, but Garnacho, you know, he's a bit of a unicorn. He doesn't matter what age he is. He's a very skillful player. He's dangerous, and Newcastle will know very little about him. So I would have been in favour of taking that risk. But overall, I don't see why not many managers would make one substitution when they have 5 available in a game where they're struggling to score. Um, so yeah, I question the logic of bringing Rashford on for Ronaldo rather than Sancho and not giving someone like Garnacho a chance for like the last 15 minutes or so. So what was your thoughts on that, Chris?
Yeah, again, kind of think I think what you're saying is pretty fair. Yeah, I mean, in trying to interpret it or understand what he was thinking, it's difficult, kind of a difficult one. I mean, yeah, Ronaldo was on for 70 minutes. He obviously thinks Ronaldo still doesn't have the legs, whatever. He maybe thought that he was going to tire towards the end of the game. That's I guess the natural thing you would think. But it's hard to know really. I think you make a fair point. Sancho wasn't doing a hell of a lot in the game. I thought Anthony was trying really hard, but I felt at times he was running out of ideas too, to be honest. So, I mean, I'd have been happy to see either of those two come on, come off, and with Rashford coming on, and like you say, you could have brought on somebody like Iqbal or Garnacho. So I'd have been happy enough with what you suggested there. Yeah, and you're right, Kyle. Ronaldo, for all his flaws and for all whatever people want to say about him, and for the fact that, like you say, he's getting a bit older and he's not able to run as much. You only have to look at Erling Haaland as an example of the fact that you don't need to be running your socks off and doing every single thing throughout a game to be able to bury a chance or two when you get them. So you're right. Ronaldo, while he's getting older and maybe his reasons for playing that way are different to Haaland's, he still has that lethal finishing about him. Were given a really bit of good service and a chance, he maybe would have taken it. I mean, the only thing I can think of is that Ten Hag maybe was looking at the fact that we weren't breaking it down and thought, well, who's going to unlock a defense? Ronaldo isn't going to unlock a defense. If he gets service, he'd put it away. But maybe he thought that Rashford would be somebody who could provide a goal, but also wriggle his way through a defense and provide service for somebody. That's maybe one possible explanation for that. So, but yeah, in hindsight, it was obviously the wrong choice, and we didn't get anything from the game really. So yeah, I think the points that you make are pretty fair.
And what about that miss from Fred? I think Rashford went around the goalkeeper and pulled it back to him. And he's the last person you wanted in that situation, wasn't he?
Like I say, Fred, he's like a duck out of water with a football at his feet sometimes. He almost looks like the kind of guy who he loves not having the ball at his feet. He just loves being like a wrecking ball. At times that's what he is. He just falls into people, falls over them, falls on the ball, falls on top of them, gets in the road. And that's kind of what he's good at. And, if he's doing that, I'll have no complaints. But you give him the ball sometimes in good areas and he just completely squanders it. Like I said, there's a couple of times during the game where I saw him, he was sailing through the middle of the pitch. Nobody was really tackling him, and he still, goes in front of him. Any other player with a decent shot, you'd be going, "Oh, it's open right up for you. Have a shot," and you just knew he wouldn't. And then he plays a side ball or he squanders it, and yeah, he's not the kind of person. He just doesn't have that finishing touch, really, in a sense.
Yeah, so despite the criticism of the manager and the players, I thought someone who deserved even more criticism was the refereeing performance. Yet again, we've seen it throughout the Premier League this season. Stonewall penalty, the Sean Longstaff foul on Sancho in the penalty area. I don't know how VAR looks at that and doesn't think it's a penalty. I can understand maybe the referee on the pitch missing it in real time, but there's no excuse for the VAR not to give that. And also, there was a Kieran Trippier foul on Ronaldo, which I thought was a penalty as well. But the foul on Sancho even more so. So I just thought that, and in the interest of balance, I actually thought Varane could have given away a penalty at the start of the game for a challenge on Callum Wilson. So all around, I think the referee was appalling on the day. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree with you. I thought River Alm was lucky to get away with that. I thought it was a penalty myself. And I thought that both the Ronaldo foul and the Sancho foul in the box were both penalties. The Sancho one, the only thing that I could think of that the referee maybe took umbrage with was the fact that Sancho made the most of it. He did a real dramatic kind of a fall when he went down. He put the arms up and arched the back and all as if, somebody just shot him, which I hate to see. But Ronaldo didn't do that, but then it's Ronaldo and he has done that in the past, and maybe that's why the referee on the pitch didn't give them. But like you say, and this is where I get really, really, really frustrated, is that the point of VAR is that they don't have to rely on these split-second decisions, and they shouldn't be getting conned by somebody throwing their arms in the air or a dive. They can see the replay and they can see there's contact. Doesn't matter the guy made the most of it or not. There's contact enough to go down. It's a penalty. And Ronaldo didn't make the most of his. I think he was actually just trying to get in on goal. And I thought they were both definite penalties. And the Varane one, in fairness, if I had been given, I would have said Varane's a silly boy. I wouldn't have said it was a bad decision. So again, it comes down for me to the VAR. Really, really frustrating. They've got the technology there. They can see what we see on TV. They're professional referees. They know what a foul is. They know what a penalty is. Yet at times they just decide not to give them, and it really, really, really frustrates me. It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, it doesn't. And it's just the same pattern every week, and multiple games. It makes absolutely zero sense. Not only will you see different referees, give different decisions for the same type of incident, you will see the same referee give two different decisions for the same incident. From one week to the next, and that's even worse.
It's shocking that it is, but like I say, what frustrates me the most is the fact that VAR is supposed to be the solution to these things. It takes, the referees on the pitch, he can become emotionally involved in a game without meaning to. He sees the tackles live, he sees how fast they are, how hard they are, his players shouting in his face, and all these things going on, the crowd on his back, and so I can see why a referee sometimes can make different decisions in different situations because they're getting swayed a little bit by emotion. But again, that's where VAR is supposed to be, that impartial overview that says, I'm not involved in the game. I'm sitting here watching it as an outsider, same as a fan is on TV. I can impartially see what's going on and keep the referee right. And they fail to do it time after time after time. And it just gets more frustrating with every poor decision. It really does.
Well, my theory is that the person upstairs simply, or wherever they are, Stockley Park in London or whatever, they simply don't want to overrule their mate. Unless the error is so massive that he has to tell him, you've made an error there. But if it's like something that's debatable or not clear cut, he won't intervene, even though he should. It's only if someone is gunned down in the penalty area will the VAR tell him to go look at the screen. If it's for most decisions, he'll just stick with what the on-field ref is given.
That's how it looks, and then that means that the VAR becomes completely irrelevant. It just becomes some kind of a, I don't know, it just becomes some kind of a tick box where you say, oh, the VAR checked it, and we went with the referee, so we did our due diligence with the VAR. But it becomes then there's no point in having the VAR, because if they're never or rarely going to change decisions by the guy on the pitch, well then what's the point of them being there? Totally agree with you. It looks like a referees union. They're looking after their mates. They don't want to make them look bad in front of a whole load of people, so they just avoid it, which is just silly, completely silly.
Yeah, and they're without doubt the worst set of referees in Europe, and the worst batch of Premier League referees there's been in my lifetime. I've been watching the Premier League pretty much since it started, and I remember I used to complain about people like Jeff Winter and Howard Webb and Mark Clattenburg and Mike Riley, but these were great referees in comparison to the ones at the moment, to be honest with you.
Absolutely.
It's a joke.
I can't believe you were complaining about Howard Webb, I have to say, but
well, I was kind of speaking about other fans there, not so much on a personal level.
So you call yourself a United fan, you don't like Howard Webb? No, but he can. But yeah, no, Kyle, you make 100. I totally agree with what you're saying, 120%. The referees now, Yeah, the one thing I think I always thought about referees like Hard Webb and if you look across Europe, the likes of Colina and stuff, I always felt like there was a selflessness about them. They were more interested in making sure the decisions were as good as they could be and doing their very best on the pitch, and less worried about themselves and their image and their reputation. And the fact that they were like that actually enhanced their reputation. People respected them more because they were willing to you know make a mistake and own up to it, and they were willing to kind of, they always seemed like they had the best interest of the game at heart. But there's certain referees in the Premier League who you look at and you think that they're almost see themselves as a celebrity in their own right. You know what I mean? And they're
Absolutely.
almost more interested in their own image than they are in the job they're doing on the pitch, and that is a horrendous. That's a road to no town, and
Mm.
that's what I see at times.
And Mike Dean is the absolute epitome of that.
Completely.
He's not currently a non-field ref anymore, but he is a VAR, and I don't think that's a good thing.
No, definitely, absolutely not. No, totally agree with you. Completely agree with you. And like you say, you even see it in retired referees. The likes of your man, was it Dermot Gallagher? Is it? You see him on BT Sports sometimes and stuff. And I hate when they go to him because it's an absolute formality. 99.9% of the time, he'll say, even if he says the decision's wrong, he'll say, "Oh, but I can see why the guy on the pitch got it wrong." And you're going, "Come on!" Even retired referees won't criticize on-field referees because it's the
Yeah.
whole referees union and maintaining the reputation and they're infallible and all that. And it's just people can see through it, and it actually just makes them look worse, not better, in my opinion.
Yeah, on Monday mornings on Sky Sports, they have a debate. There's an ex women's player, an ex man's player, the presenter on Sky Sports, and the referee Dermot Gallagher. They sit down and they review the most controversial decisions of the weekend, and every time Dermot Gallagher tries to defend the indefensible, and
Yeah.
the other three people in the studio are like, really, really.
No. And sometimes it's so laughable. You go, "Oh, come on, Dermot." Even you have to admit that in this case, he just got it flat out wrong. And he never does. He always tries to back them up. And again, you just feel like, oh, it's because he's one of your mates and you're all in the union together and you're all friends and you don't want to make him look bad on TV. And it just ruins the whole integrity of the whole conversation, really.
Well, I've been an advocate for a while now of the referee, the Premier League buying in the best referees in the world. I mean, they buy in the best players, the best coaches. They've got the best stadiums. Arguably the best fans, the best product and global product. Why not bring in the best referees? Because you can't have this great product that goes around the world. That on all four corners of the world, people are watching it every weekend, and then have these really, you know, inadequate individuals, controlling the football games and ruining them all the time. They need to bring in the best in class from around Europe and around the world, if that's possible. I'm sure, some referees will prefer to stay in their home country, but others, I'm sure, will be enticed by the cash. So, and you can't say they can't afford it because the Premier League are so rich. So that is something that they would look at. And there, of course, at the moment, not to go off topic, the Premier League are now talking about doing a preseason tournament in America, and that seems as if they're slow walking us towards having the 39th game again abroad. So they want to do all these. They're making lots of money, and they want to find ways to make more money. But to improve the quality of the product, they need to have the best referees in the world in the Premier League, in my opinion.
No, I totally agree with you. 100% agree with you. I guess the only downside from the perspective of selling a product is that you take away some of the drama because look how much time we all spend talking about all these ridiculous decisions. But I completely agree with you. I said this when VAR come in. I just want football to be about the football and the best team to win because of the best team, not because of dodgy decisions that they get or don't get. But yeah, there's always all this discussion that we have. So maybe that's part of the reason why they like it. You have all this drama that we can talk about and journalists can write about, and we can have panel discussions and shows. And you and I can talk about it on the podcast and stuff. But yeah, I agree with you, Kyle. I think it would be, to me, it's a no brainer to bring in the top referees around the world. Like you say, we're bringing in all the best players. Why not bring in the best referees and make it the absolute, as good a Premier League as it can possibly be? Yeah, I think that's a no brainer in some ways.
Yeah, and just on hard web, I was just so used to him getting decisions right, which was always worked out in our favor. That the odd occasion when he didn't rule in our favor and got the decision wrong, I got upset with him, and that's when I criticised him. But that wasn't very often, to be fair.
It wasn't very often at all, but that's because we United don't make any mistakes. It's not for any other reason.
Yeah, there's once every 5 years or so. It wasn't that often.
Uh,
So just a quick rundown of the player ratings then, even though the game was like 2 days ago, but these are going to be low scores, I'm afraid. So David De Gea would be probably the average 6. Dallo would get a 5. Varane probably a 6. Martinez a 6. Shaw a 5. Casemiro a 5. Fred probably a 2. Fernandez a 3. Sancho another 2. Anthony probably a 4. And Ronaldo probably gets a 4 as well. And Rashford, had he scored that goal he should have at the end, he definitely would have got a 7 or 8. But I'm afraid it's another 4 for him. And Ten Hag, based on what we discussed earlier, probably only gets a 3 as well. So would you agree with that, Chris?
I think they're fair, Kyle. Yeah, I don't think there's much I could argue with there, to be totally honest. Yeah, I think they're a fairly good reflection of the game. Yeah, so it was a stalemate, obviously. I feel like the guys who came in and the whole style of play, the whole game was just like we've seen before: slow, poor, sloppy passing, predictable, all the same stuff that we've been complaining about pre Ten Hag, and sometimes at the start of the season. And yeah, looked like the good old days back again. So yeah, low scores all around, I think, is definitely the order of the day.
Okay, so moving on now to the Tottenham game. Before we do so, anyone join us, comment your thoughts down below. Give us a wee like on the video, and remember to subscribe to the channel and the podcast. So another big game comes around just 3 days after the Newcastle game, which is tomorrow night now. Tottenham at home. Certainly going to be very difficult. We know all about the attacking talent they possess, how good the coach is. We know they're above us in the table. They're third in the table, in fact, behind City and Arsenal, and they're leveling points with Manchester City now. Actually,
Yeah, they're joint second technically, they're not even third.
yeah, definitely. So we know we don't need to tell anyone who their most dangerous players are. Everybody knows. So we're going to have to keep them quiet. And somehow find a goal scoring touch. Probably what I'm thinking here is it's going to be a similar approach to the Arsenal and Liverpool games at home, where we're going to mostly kind of soak up pressure and play on the counter attack, try to get goals through Rashford and Anthony on the counter attack. I know Ronaldo's probably going to have to play because Martial's not going to be fit. Hopefully Christian Eriksen comes back in for Fred. I believe he trained today, so that's a positive. So I think we're going to set up the same way as we did against Arsenal and Liverpool, and hopefully hit them on the break and score a few goals and try to if we can't get a clean sheet, at least limit them down to 1 goal and hopefully win the game 2 or 3-1. Yeah. So trying to be positive.
That's all you can be, Kyle. That's all you can be, positive. Yep, 100%. I mean, it's going to be a really, really tough game. I mean, it was a tough game against Newcastle at the weekend, as we saw. We didn't play very well, and that was a stalemate. And that was a team that's much lower down the table than what Tottenham are. And some people on paper might have thought that based on the fact that we've had our fairly reasonably in good form the last few games, that we could have won that game fairly comfortably. We weren't even close. Considering Tottenham's position in the league, like I say, virtually joint second, with Man City on 23 points. I mean, they're in a really good form. They've got a great manager. They never give up. They've got a good team. They've got players in Kane and Son and Richarlison, Perisic, who can absolutely destroy teams, or certainly make life extremely difficult for teams. So I think we're going to be really up against it. Like you said, Kyle, I think they're maybe going to dominate more of the possession than what we are. And I think we just need to be really, really strong in defence, hit them fast like we've done in recent games where we've did well against the likes of Liverpool, like you said, on the break, and use the pace of the likes of Rashford and Sancho. And Anthony, and try and hit them hard in the break, and we need to be clinical. I think that's the thing, and that's what we lacked at the weekend there. Like you mentioned about Rashford missing that header, we have to be clinical. We watched Salah at the weekend, again, not to praise players from other teams, but He got one chance against City and he missed it. Then he got his next chance and he made sure he didn't miss it. That's what top teams do. You only get a few chances, you have to take them, and that's what we need to do better in general. Is if we get a couple of sniffs, we have to make sure they count. So yeah, I think it's going to be a hard game, but yeah, hopefully we can get something out of it. You know, Liverpool was a tough game, and we played other tough games this season. You know, the City game aside, where we completely went to pieces, but I do think we can get something out of this game. But like you said, a lot of discipline, and we got to be clinical.
Yeah, well, the games against the top sides at home have certainly went well so far. So hopefully that pattern continues. Because after the 0-0 of Newcastle, and the fact that we've got an away trip to Stamford Bridge on Saturday evening, we're really looking at, we need to get 3 points here. We can't, after drawing with Newcastle, the next game has to be a must win then. And we can't allow Spurs to get away from us. I think although we have a game in hand, they're already 7 points ahead of us. So we need to rein them in. And, we have to win. We have to do well in these games if we want to make the top four. And Stamford Bridge will also present a massive challenge. So obviously, when you've got two big games back to back, you're looking at the home game to be the 3 points. Might not work out that way. Maybe we'll draw this game and we'll win the Stamford Bridge, but I would rather get the 3 points at home on the board first, and then you could say maybe the Chelsea game is more of a free hit. So yeah, I'm looking for the 3 points here. A draw probably doesn't cut it after the 0-0 with Newcastle.
Yeah, no, I was really, really disappointed with that 0-0, I have to say. Particularly with City dropping points and stuff at the weekend. I kind of thought, teams like City dropping points and Liverpool gaining points, who they're not that massively far behind the scene. I thought, we had a chance against Newcastle to make sure that we picked up some points. And I was really, really disappointed that we weren't able to get the 3, I have to say. So you're right, Kyle. That game at the weekend has probably added a bit more pressure onto the games coming up over the next few days. So yeah, you'd want to see, you'd want at least 4 points out of those 2 games, wouldn't you, if you can? Or yeah, it's going to be
or 6.
It's going to be tough. Well, six would be ideal. Yeah, 6 is what we really, really want. But what we might get is if we manage somehow to get 4 even with a win and a draw. I mean, I'd be pretty happy to not lose either those 2 games and get some good points on the board. Yeah, but they're definitely going to be tough games.
Yeah, and as we know, with having Conte in charge, Tottenham will be very hard to score against, particularly when they're playing away from home. And he'd be playing that usual kind of 5. It's the 3-4-3 formation that he usually adopts all the time. Conte. At the back they'll have Romero, Dyer, and Ben Davis, most likely. And then in the 4 midfielder, Matt Doherty, Højbjerg, Bentancur, and Ivan Perisic, and then the front 3 of Richarlison, Kane, and Son. Kulusevski not in the team at the moment. Maybe he's injured. Not too sure about that. But I know who you'd prefer to see at the back, Chris. Davinson Sanchez. I know you're not much of a fan of his, so I'm sure you'd be glad to see him play.
No, I really like him, Kyle. When he plays against United, I love him. I absolutely love him. I love Sanchez. There's always good old penalty, and I'm like, that's always never a bad thing. Never a bad thing. Yeah.
Unfortunately, at the weekend there, he only come on as a substitute in the 87th minute. So it doesn't look like he's in line to start this game. But I think maybe there'll be there'll be an injury or a suspension that we don't know about, and he will start this game.
Yeah, you can only hope. You can only hope and dream. Yeah, I think Conte knows the crack on that one too.
I know. Now that we've said that, he'll start. He'll have a 10 out of 10, and he'll score from corner.
Probably, you're probably right. I'll probably just completely scuttle it. You're probably not far wrong. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm gonna get your prediction now. Then, what do you think?
I'm gonna go. Oh, that's a really tough one, Kyle. I'm gonna go out on a limb and I'm gonna say that we'll win the game 2-1.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. Actually, I think we'll win 2-1. I remember a few years ago when Solskjaer was under pressure, and then we had back-to-back games against Spurs and City, and it seemed very unlikely we would get any points out of those games. We ended up winning both, getting 6 points. So and the Spurs result was 2-1, and it was like I think it was a counter attack goal from Rashford as usual. So I'm expecting something similar here. Rashford will probably get chances on the break. Hopefully he's more clinical than he's been in recent games. So yeah, I think Spurs will score, but I'll go. I think United might rediscover this goal scoring touch here and win 2-1. And also last season, it was a fantastic game. We beat Spurs 3-2 at Old Trafford, as Ronaldo got a hat trick that day. I would mind more of the same from Ronaldo. That sort of Ronaldo look he's been a shadow of that player so far this season. It probably a lot to do. Father time does kind of hit you overnight as a footballer, no matter how much you train and look after yourself as he has done. But also, he didn't have any preseason at all. He bunked off for most of preseason. He didn't go to Australia
Exactly.
or the 40s.
He didn't want to
So
be. He didn't want to be there. Let's be honest.
so he's taken a lot of time to get his sharpness back. Despite the goal at Everton, which was positive, what we've seen in the 2 games since then has not been convincing at all from Ronaldo. So a hat trick seems unlikely, but I'll take even one goal from Ronaldo in this game, and maybe Rashford will get one too. Or Anthony could score. So yeah, I think it'll be a 2-1 for United, but that's me trying to be positive. I know it could easily be 2-1 the other way. It wouldn't
Yeah,
surprise me.
of course.
So hopefully it's just like 3 years ago when we had back-to-back games against Spurs and City in the space of 3 days, and we won them both. So hopefully we do that again, beat Spurs and beat Chelsea and get 6 points.
Fingers
But
crossed.
I wouldn't be surprised if we. I don't think we'll lose both games. I can't see that happening. I don't think we're in that kind of form. Um, but I wouldn't be surprised if we drop some points here. But I want us to win at least one of them, and hopefully get a draw or win in the other one. We've had 3 defeats already in the league, so I don't want any more at this stage. Let's not have any more defeats between now and the World Cup, please, Ten Hag.
If we could just put one request in there, Mr. Ten Hag, if you could just grant that for me, please. No, but no, I totally agree. I think, yeah, like I said there before, I would be happy with 4 points out of these 2 games. I'd be pretty happy with that, and I do think that's doable. And look, winning both games is not off the cards. Or sorry, yeah, it's not off the table at all. I do think that we could possibly do it. In fairness, like I said, a few changes were made at the weekend there. And we were back to this kind of slow, lethargic looking play. Ten Hag will have seen that himself, obviously, and I'm hoping that he will, he realize, well, he know anyway, that we need to adapt and we need to bring some of that kind of that pace back into the team again, and just not let that happen again. The one good thing, like you said there, Kyle, is that often we are better playing against teams on the counter attack. I've said it before, and it still goes that we just still cannot break down a blanket defense. But we're not going to see that against Tottenham and Chelsea. They're going to be confident, thinking they can beat us for obvious reasons. So they're going to come all like guns blazing. They're going to win those 2. They're going to want to win those 2 games, and that might actually just play in the United's hands. So I'm hoping that we've actually more chance of getting a win from those games than we had at the weekend past.
Yeah, even though we expected, possession football under Ten Hag, it seems to be the same old, at least for the time being, that playing against teams who will dominate possession against us suits us, because we got the players to play on the break. I suppose it's just that's the squad that's been built under previous regimes, players that play on the counter attack. Under Mourinho and Solskjaer both like to do that. So even though he's made 5 signs, he still doesn't have the 11 that can play possession football against the top sides. So
Exactly.
he's being kind of pragmatic, isn't he?
Absolutely, yeah. And I think I said it on previous podcasts that Ten Hag himself has said that in the past. That when he comes into a new team, he knows that the previous players are going to be there. He can't change a whole squad overnight. And for that reason, he knows that you have to just try and get the best you can out of the squad that you inherit from previous managers. And that's what he's doing. I think he's trying to get the best out of this team. I don't think that by any means, like you said, Kai, that this is the squad that he himself would want to play the way he wants to play. But he's done really well in bringing who's brought in. He's slowly but surely moving that direction of that possession-based slick, kind of football, and he's moving slowly forward, but it's just going to take time. And I still think, I still have a lot of faith in him. I still think he's doing an absolutely great job with what he has. But there are times, like you said, that it just happens that we have players there from previous regimes to play this fast counter-attack football, and there's times whenever that's just what we're going to default to, and there's nothing we can do. But if it works, and particularly in these big games, if it ends up actually being an advantage for us because we're set up to play against possession-based teams and not be possession-based ourselves, well, then that's hopefully means that we can get points against these big teams who, on paper you think, they're more likely to beat us. So it might work well in the short term, but yeah, I don't think it's his long-term plan. But like you said, he's just got to be pragmatic as long as he can, really.
Yeah, definitely. So I just wanted to touch on what happened before the game at the weekend, and that was Fergie came onto the pitch to present, you know, an award, let's say, to Ronaldo and De Gea for his 500 appearances, and Ronaldo for his 700 career goals. So a bit of a reunion there between Ronaldo and Fergie, and also De Gea as well. He played under him. But we also seen Ten Hag and Fergie meet each other in public for the first time anyway. They had a bit of a handshake. And I put this up on the Glory Instagram and Twitter pages. I said the last Manchester United manager to win the Premier League title and the next manager to win the Premier League title. I was being a bit tongue in cheek there and being a bit hopeful, but hopefully I'm right in the end.
I like it. I like it. I think you're right. I think you're right, Kyle. Just a matter of time. Only a matter of time. Yeah, only a matter of time. No, it's always nice to see that. Like, but yeah, yeah, they're big. It's a big set of boots to fill. Like, but I so far I really do like Ten Hag. I like everything about him. I like the way he goes about his business. I just like his attitude. I like his no BS kind of. That you see from him. He's straight up. He's always he seems like a pure winner, like Ferguson was. So yeah, no, I think with a little bit of luck and good grace, he will hopefully be the next manager to take us to the title.
Although of course it will be difficult with Glazonomics and all that, but we'll not talk about that tonight. Yeah, it is going to be a hell of a challenge, and especially when you consider, you know, it matters even more now who the United owners are when you consider what we're up against. What the resources that Manchester City have. You know, how good Liverpool have been in recent seasons under Jurgen Klopp, Conte now at Spurs, Arsenal totally rejuvenated, 4 points clear at the top of the league. Certainly, it's just not going to be easy for any United manager to suddenly turn us into title challengers. So we know it's going to take time, and hopefully there will be a change of ownership, and that will help the manager more because rather than half the revenue going out of the club, most of the revenue then can be used in rebuilding the squad. Yeah, so we've already been warned that there's no money going to be spent in January, and I don't think he's going to be too happy about that. And next summer, he's been told that the outlay will not be the same as what it was this summer just past.
Mm.
So that's a bit worrying. I'm sure he wasn't pleased to hear those remarks from John Murta. But hopefully there's a regime change next summer, and the purse strings won't be as tight, and it'll give him a better chance to succeed. Even if say Jim Radcliffe did take over, although I think there'll be many suitors. I said I wasn't going to talk about this, but I have started talking about it. And
I was going to stop you there, but yeah, you go ahead. You go ahead.
so if Radcliffe comes in, and he doesn't have to be a sugar daddy, he can just allow all the club's revenue to then go towards rebuilding the football team, and then the manager will have a much better chance of getting us to the top of the league again at the end of May.
Kyle, that is what we all want, 100%. I've been nothing but critical of the Glazers, and I'm drinking out of a mug here at the minute that says "Love United, hate Glazers." So that never ever, my mind never changes on that, never will until the day they go. I could talk about it at length. But yeah, long story short, just like you said, we're not hearing good things coming out about the transfer kitty for the next couple of windows. Not to talk about other teams again, but you look back at what Guardiola was able to do in his very first one or two transfer windows, basically buy an entire new squad. Any wonder they've been so successful. And Ten Hag is not going to be afforded remotely those luxuries, despite the amount of revenue that's generated by the club. So yeah, the problem's there for all to see. The one thing I would say on this point, and I'm going to say nothing else, is that um, I just still think the fans need to remember, even whenever we're playing well and Ten Hag is getting a lot of blood out of a very cold stone, that at the end of the day, he could be getting a hell of a lot more support by another regime. And let's fans not get carried away by small wins in the short term. Let's remember that we still have a problem at our football club, and that it's probably not going to change until we have a change of ownership. And I just hope that the fans just don't forget that and keep doing whatever we can do to do a little bit of protest, whether it's personally from not buying a shirt, or not supporting them financially, or doing being involved in demonstrations like some of the other guys are doing, or whatever it takes. I just think the fans need to be united on this one and not forget. So yeah, that's all I'm going to say about that.
Yeah, the 1958 seemed to be organising demonstrations for every home game now, so regardless of results, so that's good, and hope they keep that up. But yes, you touched on there about not buying football shirts. You mentioned that you're in Barcelona recently, and you got a Barcelona shirt from the new camp. I remind you of how you can't do that at the megastore at Old Trafford, or otherwise you feel guilty about giving money to the Glazers. And it's shocking that they've taken that away from us. That we can't go and buy a replica shirt from the club shop. And even worse than that, people with children can't go and get their young children a United top for Christmas from the mega store. Otherwise, they'll feel guilty about giving money to the Glazers. It's just so sad that they've taken that away from us.
100%. I mean, as a fan, apart from actually watching the team, the other biggest part of your enjoyment is doing that. It's going and getting your new shirt every season. It's buying a little bit of merchandise. It's that's part of the enjoyment of being a fan. And it's got to the point where, like you said, Kyle, you actually feel guilty if you do that, and you feel like you're part of the problem at your own club if you support them too much in a financial way, and that is not how it should be. But that's the situation that they have created, and that's where we're at. So it just solidifies that, like I said, this need for change of ownership. But as I said, I mean, I literally could talk an entire podcast about this and nothing else. So I'll shut up and let you say whatever you're going to say. But yeah, it's just a bad situation. And again, like I say, as fans, I feel like we need to do everything we can do, however little or however big that is, to try and make this change of ownership happen. Because I've said in the past that I think that it's not about the name on the board of directors; it's about how the club's being run. But I mean, I think we've seen by now with the Glazers, it's never going to be run any other way. So to me, I think it just has to be new owners. That seems to be the only way to go.
Well, I'll tell you what, Chris, you said there that you would be happy to do an entire podcast on the ownership of the club. Well, during the World Cup, we can sit here and we can do a regime change podcast for an hour if you want to. That's no problem.
Kyle, my only reservation about that would be that an hour might not be enough. But yeah, no, I'm only kidding. But yeah, no, 100% sounds like a great plan to me. I'm sure. I'm sure people would be interested to hear and discuss that.
Okay, guys, we'll leave it there. And please subscribe to the podcast. Comment your thoughts down below and give us a like in the video if you're watching on YouTube. And I'll see you again then, Chris. Thanks for coming on.
Take care, Kyle. See you soon, mate. Good luck.